that these policies are not based on a sound foundation of science. And if that's not the case, then how can we possibly be endorsing this? In particular, given that we require children in many states to have them before they can go to school, or for other public health services, which are paid through taxes. So I think we're really in a place where, people need to start questioning what we're doing and why God gave us immune systems in the first place, and what we can do to keep those strong and healthy, and whether or not we need the government to tell us how to behave or how to keep our immune system functioning.
Well, it's as you point out, if some pandemic came out and then they had something that was proven to be effective, that's one thing. But hundreds of vaccines they want to bring online and imply, like Perry did, that it's the law when it wasn't the law, and through fraud, like in Maryland or Texas, people line up believing they're being forced to.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing. I live in the state of Idaho, and in Idaho we have a law that says very clearly that any person can choose for any reason they deem appropriate not to vaccinate themselves or their child. But that does not stop the school district every year from taking out large advertisements in the newspaper stating that children must be immunized before they can come to school.
Lisa, bingo. Let's come back and talk about that fraud and break down the film, A Home Run of Truth. A little over a year ago, here's the cover of the Greater Good DVD, award-winning film, now available on DVD. Anthony Kaufman of the Wall Street Journal wrote, a new documentary about childhood immunizations, The Greater Good could intensify debate around the potential dangers of vaccines. Yeah, it's like handing 2-year-olds loaded shotguns. I mean, this is just amazing that they've gotten away with this. And our guest, Lisa, who is Leslie, who's joining us right now, was just breaking down. She's the writer and producer of this film. She was just breaking down the deception, how they say it's the law, and then I get the guy on and go, it's not the law, and he laughs and goes, yeah, I know, I don't give my kids shots. I mean, this is sick, how in every town you're listening and they lie to you and say it's the law. Please continue.
Well, you know what, Alex, I think the most interesting thing is that we never actually studied the safety of mercury before it was put into childhood vaccines. We never studied whether it was safe to put in contact lens solutions or in antacids or any other places it's been put. Aluminum's been put in there, too. We never studied the safety of aluminum, and it's been used as an adjuvant, immune system stimulant for 80 years in vaccinations. And what's really interesting to me now is that in the last 3 to 5 years, there's a growing group of scientists who are actually starting to do this research, despite the fact that it's very, very risky for their careers and their futures. And they are finding that the aluminum in vaccines is causing cognitive impairment, brain damage, neuron cell death in animal models, autoimmune syndromes, all sorts of immune dysfunction. And these authors have written that the potential for just aluminum, just the aluminum component on its own, to cause profound impact on the brains and the immune systems of human beings is profound, immense. And yet the CDC and FDA say that it's perfectly safe. And this is what I find the most astounding, is that this has been going on for not just a few years, but nearly 100 years, and yet no one's bothered to stop it.
Well, I saw mainline studies out of England and the U.S. a decade ago where they were saying 3 shots for the flu, 3 vaccines doubled the chances for Alzheimer's in studies they did. They know aluminum cans and aluminum cookware. I mean, there are 45-year-olds getting Alzheimer's now. Neurological disorders, off the charts. Cancer, off the charts. Everything we do in Western culture, the bisphenol A is now in big studies linked to brain tumors, linked to women going into puberty early, men becoming feminized. This industrial society, the way it's been deployed, is killing us.
Without a doubt. And if you look at the fertility rates, the sperm counts of men in the last 50 years, a decline of 50% at least. If you look at, how difficult it is for women to conceive, same thing. And there's clearly a role that vaccines play, and the toxins that vaccines contain in disrupting our endocrine systems, our hormonal systems. So, I don't know how far the average person wants to go down that rabbit hole. I mean, clearly your viewers and listeners are far more up to speed on those issues than the massive, the general public. But there are clearly questions raised when we start taking vaccines that have aluminum and mercury in them, or mercury that's been banned in the United States, and give them to the entire world outside the U.S. and other developed countries. It really has to give you pause about what the policies are really about. And when we know that these things are disrupting our hormonal balances, and then you combine them with all the pesticides, and as you say, the bisphenol A and all the other contaminants in our food supply, the GMO food, on and on and on. These things are clearly having a major impact on our ability to procreate, on our ability to think independently, on our ability to stand up for ourselves, and our ability, I think, to really question what's going on. And vaccines are, without going too far down that rabbit hole, clearly are causing damage. And I think the point of our film is that not that we know all of this is proven, not that it's unequivocal, but that there is a growing body of science out there that casts question on vaccines.
All I know is women's breast cancer is up 2,000+%. Pediatric cancer, depending on which type, over 10,000%. Autism, thousands and thousands of percentage, from 25,000 to 1 in 68, 1 in 57. I mean, it varies the numbers. Everywhere where it's industrialized, neurological disorders, skeletal disorders. What's going on is killing us.
And let's talk about the autism thing. The CDC and FDA, the vaccine authorities in general, continue to assert that there is no science linking mercury to autism. And yet an independent scientist did a review of all of the available science, empirical research, looking into the mercury-autism link. And she found that the body of science favored a link 3-to-1, not the reverse.
Stay there. We're going to come back and break down some more of those numbers. There's been other big studies as well where nations that have higher vaccine rate have higher rates of all sorts of diseases. We'll be right back.
We're on the mark.
Earlier, I was looking around for the proper quote in Providence. My memory was correct. It was a Marine Corps general known as the Professor because he studied so much military doctrine and was so successful in World War II and the Korean War. They were surrounded at the Chosin Reservoir in Korean War early in December 1950, to be precise. They were surrounded. He succeeded in breaking through and leading a 70-mile march to safety. It was reportedly more than 20 times their numbers. I just went and looked it up on the history site, who he was, from my memory. And he said, "Sir, we are surrounded. Excellent, we can attack in any direction." As that wasn't really even a sarcastic point. If you've got a smaller force but have more high-power workable weapons, because the communist Chinese they were fighting didn't have very good weapons, doesn't matter if it's 10, 20, 30 times the number. Now you can attack in any direction, go any direction you want. And, of course, some would look at it as, I mean, obviously it's a bad place to be in, but now you're committed. Now there's not any games. Now you know you've got to fight. And that's the position we have to put ourselves in. I get emotional about this because I sit here calmly researching this year after year. And when I pop this in the DVD player, and because I would go from memory and say, oh, yeah, the state attorney, I had him on, lining up thousands of black people crying with dogs barking at him, saying, it's the law, you got to take shots. And I got him on and said, hey, you know it's not the law to take shots. You know you should have told him about the waiver. And he said, oh, you should be a lawyer. I mean, the interview's out there. Oh, in fact, now that we know his name, because it's in the film, so I'd forgotten. We got to look it up and find that old interview, because it's amazing. It was on CNN. They're going, it's the law to take shots, kids crying. It was shown all over the country to make you think it's the law. And a total fraud. And I get the guy on, he's like, yeah, you ought to be a lawyer. Oh, I ought to be a lawyer because I know a little bit about reality. And he's like, yeah, I don't vaccinate my kids. I started laughing like it's funny that he knows it's bad. He doesn't do it to his kids, but he goes out with police standing behind him and goes, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. You will take it or you will go to jail. And we tried to get our media people out there to talk to the families lined up with the police dogs and the riot cops. And the police were like, get back, don't talk to them. So they could engage in a fraud and shoot them up. Again, does that give you any idea how wicked these governments are? What else are they lying to you about? And you bet I get emotional about that. Because in Nazi Germany, we use that example a lot because that's where it happened. Medical tyranny, Soviet Union, same deal. Going back to our guest, the maker of the documentary film, The Greater Good, Leslie Manookian, available at InfoWarsShop.com. For 10 minutes, I'm going to shut up because I'll keep asking questions. You've got the floor. Why should people see this film? What will they see in the film? Who should people show this to? Can people air it on Access Television? I mean, how do they show this to people and save lives?
Well, at this point, it's interesting to me. We were asked that. Who's your target audience? Who do you want to see the film? We want everybody to see the film because there are somewhere between 200 and 400 vaccines in development right now, and the vaccine authorities want every man, woman, and child on the planet to have vaccines every year of their life, basically from cradle to grave. That's what's being recommended with the flu vaccine, and there are many others that are coming down the pipe. So, people often think that, I had my kids are 10, my kids are 12, they're grown, I don't have to worry about this anymore. This issue actually affects all of us. And as you so rightly mentioned early on in the show, neurodegenerative diseases are on the rise, and not just a little bit, but they're reaching epidemic proportions. Most adults nowadays, when in their elderly years, develop some kind of dementia. And that's not the way it's always been. And it's not supposed to be that way. And so, the reason we made the film is because we wanted to reach everybody and help people to understand that this is an issue they should all care about for their children's health, but also for their own. But also, very importantly, for them to understand that this issue is not nearly as black and white as they've been told by the mainstream media. We are constantly told that there's no science showing that vaccines cause any harm. We're constantly told that there's no evidence that vaccines are linked to autism, asthma, allergies, learning disabilities, speech delays, on and on and on, gut issues, all this stuff, asthma. And the reality is that I've compiled a document of over 100 studies, papers, letters to editors, and things like that show that vaccines can cause inflammation of the brain and permanent damage, that they can cause learning disabilities and behavioral problems, that they can cause immunological problems, that they can cause gut problems, that they can cause a whole spectrum of autoimmune diseases. And as I said earlier, we're not, all this research doesn't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that vaccines are causing all these things, but they certainly are enough to show that we should all have great, great reason for concern, and we should all want to figure out what the heck is really going on and whether or not more harm is being done than good by using these vaccines so broadly. And I think the other really important issue that we raised with the film that I think is so vital for all of us to understand is who should decide what we put into our bodies? Do you want the government choosing how you keep yourself well, or do you want to make that choice yourself? And if we don't have the freedom to choose what we inject into our own bodies and to our children's bodies, then are we really free? It is no secret in science that vaccines injure and kill some people. No secret. And given that, how can we possibly, yield that right of self-determination to some nondescript, faceless bureaucrat in another place? So this is one of the major issues that we've tried to raise with the film, is helping people to understand that vaccines are not candy, that there is a downside. And to me, Alex, this whole idea that vaccines are candy, that it's like drinking water, is the reason why those people will line up in Maryland to go and get the shots under threat of imprisonment and fines. Because they just think there's no downside. They believe what they've been told. And so we really hope the film helps people to understand that it's not black and white like you've been told. It's far more nuanced. And maybe you'll choose that you want to get the polio vaccine. Maybe that's what some people will choose. Maybe others will choose they don't want any vaccines. But the point is that unless you're informed and you really understand what the issues are, what the true long-term health ramifications are, then you're not free to make those choices. And